Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunda Vihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunda Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunda Vihari Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Gaura Nitai, 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 Jaya Gaura Nitai. Jaya Sitaram Lakshman Bhakta Hanuman, 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 Jaya Srinath Ji, Jaya Gopal Ji, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Gauratananda. Jai Gaur. Thank you all for coming to this week's Sunday feast. So Today we'll be reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, as it is, by Srila Prabhupada. Chapter 10, text number 9. So you can repeat. And then it's a very well-known verse, so if you know it, certainly please try to follow. Machita matkata prana bodhayanta parashparam kathayantascha mam nityam tushyanti charamanti cha Machita matkata prana bodhayanta parashparam kathayantascha mam nityam tushyanti charamanti cha Machita matkata prana bodhayanta parashparam kathayantascha mam nityam tushyanti charamanti cha. Would you like to chant? Their minds fully engaged in me. Matkata prana. Their lives devoted to me. Bodhayanta. Preaching. Parashparam. Among themselves. Kathayanta. Talking. Cha. Also. Mam. About me. Nityam. Perpetually. Tushyanti. Becoming pleased. Cha. Also. Ramanti. Enjoy transcendental bliss. Cha. Also. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. Let's repeat. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service. And they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. Purport. Pure devotees, whose characteristics are mentioned here, engage themselves fully in the transcendental service of the Lord. Their minds cannot be diverted from the lotus feet of Krishna. Their talks are solely on the transcendental subjects. The symptoms of the pure devotees are described in this verse specifically. Devotees of the Supreme Lord are 24 hours daily engaged in glorifying the qualities and pastimes of the Supreme Lord. Their hearts and souls are constantly submerged in Krishna, and they take pleasure in discussing Him with other devotees. In the preliminary stage of devotional service, they relish the transcendental pleasure from the service itself, and in the mature stage, they are actually situated in the love of God. Once situated in that transcendental position, they can relish the highest perfection which is exhibited by the Lord in His abode. Lord Chaitanya likens transcendental devotional service to the sowing of a seed in the heart of the living entity. There are innumerable living entities traveling throughout the different planets of the universe, and out of them there are a few who are fortunate enough to meet a pure devotee and get the chance to understand devotional service. This devotional service is just like a seed, and if it is sown in the heart of a living entity, and if he goes on hearing and chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That seed fructifies, just as the seed of a tree fructifies with regular watering. The spiritual plant of devotional service gradually grows and grows until it penetrates the covering of the material universe and enters into the Brahma Jyoti effulgence in the spiritual sky. In the spiritual sky, that plant grows more and more until it reaches the higher planet, highest planet, which is called Goloka Vrindavan, the supreme planet of Krishna. Ultimately, the plant takes shelter under the lotus feet of Krishna and rests there. Gradually, as the plant grows fruits and flowers, that plant of devotional service also produces fruits, and the watering process in the form of chanting and hearing goes on. This plant of devotional service is fully described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 19. It is explained there that when the complete plant takes shelter under the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, one becomes fully absorbed in the love of God. Then he cannot live, even for a moment, without being in contact with the Supreme Lord, just as a fish cannot live without water. In such a state, the devotee actually attains the transcendental qualities in contact with the Supreme Lord. The Srimad Bhagavatam is also full of such narrations about the relationship between the Supreme Lord and his devotees. Therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam is very dear to the devotees. As stated in the Bhagavatam itself, 12, 13, 18, Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam Yad Vaishnavanam Priyam. In this narration, there is nothing about material activities, economic development, sense gratification or liberation. Srimad Bhagavatam is the only narration in which the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord and his devotees is fully described. Thus, the realized souls in Krishna consciousness take continual pleasure in hearing such transcendental literatures, just as a young boy and girl take pleasure in association. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnamascha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padana Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamascha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Radha Govinda Goswami Dinamya Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Dinamya. So, today's class is actually based on a class given by a very well-known devotee in ISKCON. He's left his body now a few years ago, but he was a very, very wonderful devotee, a scholar. Many of you may know him, Gopi Paranadhana Das. He was one of Prabhupada's very, very first disciples. He was born in New York and studied in Columbia, was a great scholar, and joined Prabhupada in 1973. And Prabhupada instructed him to learn Sanskrit and become a Sanskrit scholar. So after Prabhupada left his body in 1977, Gopi Paranatana Prabhu was the key person or one of the leading devotees who completed the translation of Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavatam and also several other books. And one of his most notable achievements was the Brihad Bhagavatam. He translated the Brihad Bhagavatam, a 3-volume book. I just wanted to start the class by reading a little sign he used to put right in front of his desk. It's very powerful. It says, "Do not hear from the mouths of persons lacking proper conduct. If your conduct is below par, you should not publicly preach about the Lord. Close the door and preach to yourself." Bhajan really begins when one's outside and inside are the same. Having read that, I really wonder if I should be sitting here today, but anyway, that was his mood. He was moved that inside he was very, very pure, dedicated, and devoted. So anyway, we will discuss some things that I picked up here in his class and try to share with you to the best of my ability. So this verse in chapter 10, as we know, chapter 10 is entitled "The Opulence of the Absolute." And this section of chapter 10, verses 8 to 11 specifically, they are known as the Chaturshloki Gita. Chaturshloki Gita. So in the Chaturshloki Gita, Krishna gives the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, right? So out of the 700 verses, these 4 verses are known to contain fundamental basic information, the essence that he wants Arjuna to understand. 10.8, the verse preceding the one we chanted, a very famous verse, first verse of the Chaturshloki Gita, Krishna establishes his position by saying, "Aham sarvashya prabhu, mata sarvam pravartate, iti matva bhajante ma buddha bhava samayika." I am the Supreme Lord of all spiritual and material planets. Everything emanates from me. The wise who know this perfectly engage in my devotional service. So, the last line of that verse, Buddha Bhava Samanvita. Buddha Bhava Samanvita. The intelligent, who understand the Supreme Lord, who understand Krishna's position, what do? Buddha Bhava Samanvita. With power, with love and devotion, they worship the Supreme Lord. So then, how do they worship the Lord? What do these intelligent people do? So this is the key message in verse 9. So in verse 9, as Srila Prabhupada says in the very beginning of the purport, it describes the activities of the pure devotees. The pure devotees. The pure devotees of the Lord, they are constantly engaged in the loving service of the Lord. So now, before we can get to this stage, before we can truly love the Lord with all of our heart and power, we need to understand Him. The analogy we can think of, in India is famous for cricket, right? We all know that India, when there's a test match, many of the Prabhujis especially, they're staying up till 2 or 3 a.m. watching the cricket, trying to follow, and they get really engrossed in that cricket, And not having grown up in India, I don't know so much about cricket, but certainly a few years ago, there was a great cricket star. What is it? Sachin Tendulkar, right? Sachin Tendulkar, right? And so
Close enough,
right? Close enough. Yes, I'm not a follower of cricket, but the point is, right? When he used to score a century, right, in the test match, right? The next day, what is everybody doing, right? Everybody is talking about the match, what happened, how he caught up from behind, how he scored that century, how he hit that six, so forth, right? This is the whole mood, right? They're so engrossed in that mode that that's all they can think about, and that's all they can talk about, right? That's all they can talk about. But you come to America, you come to a person like me who doesn't really know anything about cricket, or not having grown up in India, I can't relate to that. Why are these people going so crazy about cricket, and why do they want to stay up till 3 a.m. watching a cricket match? Makes no sense to me, right? So the point from here is that really to become engrossed in anything, in something, right? You really have to understand it. You have to understand it. You have to really connect with it. You have to, really put all of your mind and energy behind it. So, and then when you do that, it becomes very easy to glorify a person. You can easily glorify, right? The cricket fans glorified Sachin so much, right? You make him a hero. And not just cricket, right? We see this with movie stars, sports heroes, whatever. Any great celebrity or personality, right? When they do something great that people can relate to, people connect to them, they start wanting to know everything about that person, how he lives, what does he do in his spare time, what kind of car does he drive, and so forth, right? They get into every aspect of that person, and they're talking about him all the time, they're thinking about him all the time. So, the conclusion from this is that, if we want to become like these pure devotees, and really constantly, 24 hours a day, start glorifying Krishna, we have to understand Krishna. Right? We have to know who he is. We have to understand his achievements. We have to understand what he has done, what his position is, how he behaves, what does he do in his spare time. So how does he interact with his followers and devotees and so forth. So this is the essence of this verse, right? It talks about how these devotees come together and are constantly engrossed. Prabhupada said in the purport, what did he say? Devotees of the Supreme Lord are 24 hours a day. Just imagine, 24 hours a day, they're thinking about Krishna, how to glorify him, how to worship him, how to please him. Glorifying, how do they glorify him? Glorify his qualities, his pastimes, his names, and they're in this way constantly submerging themselves in Krishna. And just as the cricket fans and the movie fans and so forth, they get so much delight from talking about their hero. These devotees also, because they're talking about their hero, Krishna, they are taking so much delight and pleasure. Right? The verse says, Tushyanti cha ramanti cha. Tushyanti, they're getting complete satisfaction. Tushyanti, and then ramanti. They're experiencing transcendental bliss. Transcendental bliss, right? By doing so. So we need to absorb ourselves in this subject. Absorb our minds in the philosophy of Krishna, his activities, and understand that Krishna is different from all these movie stars and sports stars or cricket fans or whatever. And actually, he is different. How is he different? He's absolute, right? These movie stars, heroes, they come and go, right? They're here, they're popular for some time, and then the next star comes along, right? And so forth. Krishna is not like that. He is absolute. He's been there from the very beginning, and he will be there till the very end, right? So he is that ultimate hero, the ultimate person that if we can understand and make him our hero, then we can glorify him endlessly. Nityam, right? Nityam. And how do we do this again? How can we make this happen? Srila Prabhupada often quoted this wonderful analogy of this iron rod, right? If we take an iron rod just in the room, room temperature, it's not very, and we can touch it, feel it, so forth, has no big effect. But we put that iron rod in fire, right? We put that iron rod in fire, it gradually heats up, and then becomes red hot. Now we take out that iron rod, and now, right, that iron rod has the same power as the fire. And if you touch it, you also become fire, right? So this iron rod is now able to transmit the power of the fire. So this is what the pure devotees do, right? They engross themselves, they submerge themselves in the fire of Krishna consciousness. So much so that they become like that iron rod, radiant. They're radiating heat, but they're radiating pure bliss, pure energy of Krishna consciousness. So now, if we come into contact with one of those pure devotees, automatically some of that mood, some of that knowledge, some of that power gets transferred to us, right? And this is if we, sometimes I wonder, in the beginning, in the early days, Srila Prabhupada, how was he able to transform so many people who had no background in Krishna consciousness? They had absolutely opposite. They were engaged in all kinds of nonsensical activities, right? Things that we forbid, avoid, kind of thing. And yet they met Prabhupada, and in a very, very short time, they became great devotees, right? And today, some of those same people, they become, even amazing. They become sannyasis and great, great preachers who have accomplished unlimited things. So how did they do that? See, this was the power of the pure devotee. Just coming into contact with Srila Prabhupada, they imbibed his mood, his nature, his qualities, and they were able to act on that. So this is the business of pure devotees. They have nothing but to remain 24 hours. So again, the key mood in Srila Prabhupada's movement, in terms of what is this preaching? Preaching, it refers to this notion of Sankirtana. Sankirtana. Sankirtan is, as we know, stated in many scriptures as the dharma, the supreme occupation, the prime duty for this current age, this age of Kali. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it's stated, Canto 1, Chapter 1, Text 12, it says, Prayana alpa ayusha sabya, kalo asmin yuge janaha, manda sumanda mataha, manda bhagya hi upadhrita. So in Kali Yuga, what is our condition, right? In Kali Yuga, we are manda, we are by nature lazy. And then we are sumanda matayo. Sumanda matayo means we are misguided, right? We don't really know what is right from wrong, right? We don't know. And above all, upadhrita, we are disturbed, right? So in this condition, how can we really learn from a pure devotee? How can we really take to this process, right? And then Srimad Bhagavatam also answers this later in Srimad Bhagavatam. He says that in Kale dosho nidhi rajan, right? This Kali Yuga is full of dosha, full of faults, full of difficulties. Asti hi eko mahan guna. But even though it's full of all these faults and things, eko mahan guna, there's one supreme quality still available in this Kali Yuga. What is that? Kirtana eva Krishnasya. Kirtana eva Krishnasya. Mukta sangha param rajay. Right? Mukta sangha param rajay. So this one quality that remains in this Kali Yuga is the ability to perform kirtan. Kirtan of Krishna. Kirtanadasya Krishnasya. Kirtanadeva Krishnasya. And what will happen if we perform that kirtan? Mukta sangha param rajay. Mukta sangha param. Param means supreme, right? Supreme destination. We can attain that supreme destination. Now kirtan, what does kirtan mean? Kirtan, the root word of kirtan is kirti, right? Kirti means what?
Glorify.
To glorify, right? To glorify, right? So when we're performing kirtan, we are glorifying. And as the verse says, Kirtanat eva Krishnasya. Right? So yes, when we can glorify Krishna, when we can truly glorify Krishna, then we can attain that supreme destination. And Bhagavatam also says, that according to time, place, and circumstances, there are different ways of achieving spiritual advancement. In Satya Yuga, it was by meditation. In Treta Yuga, by performing great sacrifices, yagyas. In Dwapara Yuga, by performing great worship of the deities. But in Kali Yuga, the simple process, because we are manda, sumanda, upadita, we don't have the mental capacity, we don't have the lifespans to be able to perform all these other types of services. So, very simple, right? Just chant and perform Sankirtana. So, and it's stated that whatever that result was obtained in all these different yugas can be obtained in Kali Yuga simply by this Sankirtan. So, in this age where people are the least qualified, the only way to approach him is by directly glorifying him. How do we glorify him? We can glorify his form, how beautiful Krishna is, his bodily characteristics, his pastimes, how he engages in various leelas, whether it's the killing of demons or his beautiful pastimes in Vrindavan with the gopis and so forth. In so many different ways we can think about his pastimes and how he poise and so forth. We can think about his qualities, how merciful he is, how beautiful he is, and so forth. We can even glorify his devotees, because his devotees belong to him. His pure devotees, they belong to him. But especially when we take his name and we are directly glorifying him, because he is absolute, there is no difference between his name and him. And he himself says that Krishna says when he's speaking to, I think, Narada, what he says, Naham tishtani vaikunthe yoginam hridayeshu va mad bhakta yatra gayati tatra tishtami Narada. He's speaking to Narada. He says, no, I am not present in Vaikuntha. Right? I'm not there. I'm not even present in the hearts of the great yogis performing meditation for so many years. I'm not present. So then where is he present? He says, Mad Bhakta Yatra Gayanti. Or he says, I am there where my devotees are chanting my names. They're glorifying me. So, as Krishna says, he's present where his devotees are glorifying him, or as this verse says, where they are, right? Where they are talking amongst themselves about me. So we can conclude this is the most effective way for us in this current age to revive our Krishna consciousness, especially through the name and the Sankirtan process. Srila Prabhupada translates Sankirtan as congregational chanting, coming together and chanting together. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, 500 years ago, initiated this congregational process in the house of Srivas Thakur, where there was a different mood. There was dozens of devotees. They would get together every night. Srivas Thakur's little angan there. If you've been there, you will know it's not a very big place. It's probably not the same house, but it's quite a small place. And dozens of devotees getting there together every night. They would close the doors and have Harinam Sankirtan all night, every year, every day for a whole year. And this was the beginning. All of the devotees simply coming together and glorifying Krishna. Now, this isn't exclusive meditation by ourselves, but it's congregational chanting. And it's not a formal thing. It doesn't require special priests, doesn't require a special murat, doesn't require a special place. We can do it in anyone's house, anytime, with just a few of us together. We can get together and chant, glorify Krishna, discuss Krishna, talk about Krishna. And again, we don't have to be scholars to do this. Whatever little bit we know, we can share. We can share, we can hear. Right? This is the mood. This is the mood of devotees. And as we do this more and more, our hearts become purified. And simply said, Srila Prabhupada based this whole international society on this fundamental principle of providing people with this knowledge of how to surrender to Krishna and thereby become spiritualized, or as he would say, Krishnized, right? Krishnized. If we don't do this, what will happen? We will get absorbed. We'll get absorbed in the news, the sports, the work, and so forth, right? And so many other mundane things, and we will become not Krishnized, but materialized. Sorry about that. Announce. Mundane things. So this is, in those mundane things, when we get absorbed, we'll get some temporary pleasure, but nothing eternal, nothing lasting, not real. In this purport, Prabhupada also discusses the Bhakti Lata Bij, right? And he explains it very, very carefully there. It says that the fortunate soul gets the seed of bhakti planted in his heart, right? Brahmande Brahmite Kaun Bhagyavan Jiv. Who is that Bhagyavan, fortunate person? Who? Guru Krishna Prasade. By the mercy of Guru and Krishna, Paya Bhakti Lata Bij, is able to get that seed of devotional service in their heart. And once they get in their heart, they have to become the gardener. The seed has been planted, they have to become the gardener. Regularly water that seed with chanting, hearing, regularly, right? That waters that seed. But just as you know, if you plant a seed in the garden and you just water it, what else happens apart from the seed growing? We get weeds, right? In fact, sometimes the weeds grow faster than the plant, right? Plants, right? So the gardener is very, very careful to pluck out all of these weeds. What are these weeds? These weeds are the material desires, right? The desires for pride, prestige, all these subtle things for, recognition, and so forth, right? Sense gratification. All of these are various weeds, and if we let any of them grow, they can stifle our little plant. And then, what else can happen to our little seedling in the garden? Yes. Well, no, but Chinmay Prabhu, who has this garden here, who looks after the garden. If you talk to Chinmay Prabhu, groundhogs, right? Groundhogs, and he was even saying deer. They jump over the fence, right? They jump over the fence. They eat and they trample and so forth. So the same thing can happen to our little seedling in the heart, right? If we don't look after it, that seedling can get crushed. It can get trampled by so many different animals, or as we say, anarthas. So what do we do about that? What can we do about that? As Chinmay Prabhu has done, he's built a big fence around his garden, right? To try and keep all of these animals and unwanted things out. So what is this fence? This fence? Association, right? This fence is the association of devotees, right? So we put ourselves in the middle, surround ourselves with all the devotees, all the advanced devotees, right? And then they protect us, right? They protect us. Because if we don't, it is known as the Hati Mata Aparad, right? Hati Mata means mad elephant, right? Just imagine if the mad elephant got into Chinmay Prabhu's garden, right? They would just, all these marigolds would go, all these vegetables would go, just like that, right? So he spent all of that time, effort, energy cultivating a beautiful garden, and just in 1 second, right, it would all be destroyed, right? So this is why we have to be very careful to protect this creeper. And if we do, then, as Prabhupada was saying, the creeper will grow and grow, eventually reach the spiritual world and take shelter at the lotus feet. So, but what can we really do in this material world to serve Krishna in pure love? Most of the things we can do, if we really think about it, we can do much, much better in the spiritual world. We may think of cooking as an example. We may like to cook for Krishna. But we know, right, in Brahma Samhita, Krishna says, Chintamani prakara sadmashu kalpavriksha lakshavriteshu. He has thousands of Lakshmis who are looking after him, right? He has in Vrindavan thousands of gopis who are looking after him. He has his mother and so forth, right? And Srimati Radharani, the best cook in the universe, is feeding him sumptuously every day, right? And in fact, Radharani, she was benedicted. She had a blessing from who? Durvasa Muni, right? Durvasa Muni said, whatever you cook shall be nectar. Right? And because of this blessing, Mother Yashoda from the childhood requested her mother, please send your daughter here to cook for my Krishna. And in this way, Radharani was cooking for Krishna regularly every day since childhood, right? So what is Krishna going to do with our little offering of rice and dal and sabji and roti? You know what? Now he's got the best cooks in the world looking after him. You know what need does he have? You know, so what service can we really do that can be pleasing to Krishna here, right? Actually, there's only two Gopi Parandan Prabhu mentions that can be really done in the material world that you really can't do in the spiritual world. The first is killing demons, right? Killing demons, there are no demons in the spiritual world, so there's no question of killing demons, so that can't be done. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who we all follow, that was not his mood, right? He did not take up weapons. Many of Krishna's incarnations did come with weapons, and they did annihilate demons and so forth. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, no. And the closest he got was Jagai and Madai, right? He took out his Sudarshan Chakra and was about to kill them. But no, even Nityananda Prabhu stopped him. No, you cannot do this, right? So this was not Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's move, right, to act with violence. So that really only leaves one thing that can be done in the material world that really we can't do in the spiritual world. Anyone guess? Yes? In the context of service. Right? This verse is Bodhayantas Parashparam, Bodhayanta, preaching, right? In the spiritual world, who are you going to preach to?
To the choir.
Right? Right? Whereas here in the material world, there are so many conditioned souls who don't know anything about Krishna, who have no connection, right? Who have no idea. So in this material world, this preaching activity is something we can undertake. What should preaching consist of? Harinam Sankirtan, talking about devotees, getting together, glorifying ourselves. That preaching doesn't mean if you're shy going out there, in Journal Square or New York City and trying to, preaching can be just simply, as this verse says, Bodhayanta Parashparam, amongst ourselves. Katayantas Chamam Nityam. So this is what pure devotees do. But as we're doing this, the idea of encouragement is also quite important. We should always be encouraging one another. We should never say anything that discourages someone from the path of bhakti, the path of devotion. What excuse can we come up with that would discourage someone? We should only encourage. It may be sometimes difficult, but actually, from the spiritual perspective, it's a crime. It's a crime to usually go on it back again. We'll just wrap up in a couple of minutes. If we actually want to be compassionate, then we need to be always encouraging. Right? Encouraging is very important. Also, this verse talks about unity. Right? Bodhayantas Parashparam, Katayantas Chamam Nityam. Unity means coming together in harmony. And sometimes we may not see this so much in our lives, especially as we become more and more involved, in Krishna consciousness and service and so forth. Sometimes we may see so much conflict and disagreement between ourselves. But ultimately that is not the business of Vaishnavas, right? To be fighting amongst themselves and so forth. Practically, it may be very difficult, but we always have to remember that as Vaishnavas, as devotees, as aspiring devotees, we're all working for that one cause, the same cause. That same cause to please Guru, please Srila Prabhupada, please Krishna. In the nature of service, it's human nature. We will have quarrels, we will have disagreements. Sometimes tempers may flare, right? But we should not take these quarrels too seriously. Not maintain bad feelings. Let these things pass. Let these things pass. We should be always ready to forgive, even when devotees may do some terrible things. We shouldn't let them bother us. This is the saintly quality, Brahminical quality, to forgive no matter how bad it is. It's very difficult, but this is it. One who is able to forgive can be compassionate. And without being compassionate, it is impossible to preach. So the only service we can do in this material world, preaching, without that genuine compassion in our heart, we cannot do that. And if we don't have this ability to forgive, then we cannot have this ability to be compassionate. We have to be satisfied in our own Krishna consciousness. Not necessarily satisfied materially, but we have to be content, not proud or overconfident. That actually becomes a disqualification, right? If we become proud and confident, then we start thinking how we can exploit people, how we can use people. If we are always satisfied, for feeling dependent on Krishna, if we can genuinely feel that Krishna, He is the ultimate doer, He is the planner, He is the orchestrator, right? If we can feel that dependence on Krishna, then all of these other things can subside, right? That is the secret of the last line of that verse, right? Pushyanti cha, ramanti cha, right? Pushyanti cha, ramanti cha. So we have to be forgiving. And we've run out of time, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exemplifies this and is so very, very clear on this point in his Sikshastakam prayer. Right? It says, Amanina manadena, kirtaniya sadahari. Right? So if we want to perform kirtan forever, nitya, right, which is the secret for satisfaction and happiness, then amanina manadena. We have to become amani. Amani means not calculating how people will look at me if I say this or do this, or not expecting anyone to think, oh, what a great devotee I am, what a great achievement I've made, right? Amanina, right? I'm not the object of worship. I have no desire to be recognized, famed. And if you want to worship someone, pure devotee is there, Guru is there, Krishna is there. Let's make them the object of our worship. This is the means by which we can develop this movement. We may sometimes have to fight vigorously, right, to defend the truth, the honor of the pure devotees, the honor of Prabhupada, protect his movement. Sometimes that requires us to become aggressive and so forth. We may have to stand on our principles, right? But it doesn't have to be done with hatred, right? It's fighting, doesn't have to have that resentment. Pandavas fought, right? So much, but they never had this hatred, right? If we think about Bhima, before they were exiled, Bhima could have single-handedly killed all of the Kauravas there, right? They would not have had to go, but there was no hatred, there was not that mood, right? So they tolerated the exile, they took everything, and even when ultimately they did fight and killed so many of their cousins and so forth, still there was no hatred in their heart. They did it out of duty, right? Yudhishthira Maharaj never thought, hey, this Duryodhana, he is standing in my way of success, let me kill him at any cost, right? This was the mentality of Duryodhana. And Yudhishthira, no, he was sadhu, right? He never thought. Fought without hatred. So this is the way we also have to be, right? Not expecting to be worshipped, not expecting to be respected, and at the same time, always give honor and respect to everybody else. At least honoring others to the extent they deserve, right? Honoring them. There's no harm in giving someone more respect than they deserve. It's better to err on that side. If we do it with a simple heart, if we flatter someone, then then there's some ulterior motive. We're trying to get something out of it. So we don't want to be manipulative. But when we disrespect Vaishnavas, or if we say something that might hurt a Vaishnava, then this is very, very dangerous. It's very, very dangerous, right? This is that mad elephant who we've let into our heart and is going to trample very, very delicate creeper. So the same respect we show to Krishna, to show his dham, show his devotees, right? We need to show that same respect to all of the Vaishnavas. No matter how big they are, how small they are, we can never behave in such a way, never mind Vaishnavas, with any living entity. We have to respect them. Right? This is the basis of not wanting to kill anyone, kill any living entity for our own need, our own good, right? This is the basics of that. So never mind animals and so forth, but human beings, right? Our fellow human beings, how can we ever mistreat them? We have to show them utmost respect. So we've run out of time, but Rupa Goswami summarizes this very nicely in Nectar of Instruction, right? He teaches us how to respect 3 levels of devotees, Krishniti, Yasugiri, Manashanadhiyata, right? Just very quickly, right? Anyone who is even chanting the names of Lord, we should at least offer respect mentally with our minds, right? No matter what kind of person he is or what his background is, he's chanting the names of the Supreme Lord, Krishna, no other than Krishna. That's wonderful. We should respect that person. Then the next level, if someone's taken initiation and they've surrendered and they're on the path of bhakti, we need to offer them a lot more respect, right? Recognize them, honor them, try to serve them. And then, someone who is at the topmost level, who's become a teacher himself, a pure devotee, that person we should be ready to offer our lives to, surrender and fully recognize. So if we can completely, in that verse Rupa Goswami says, when that person is free from the tendency to criticize others, then he becomes at that level, right? That person we need to surrender ourselves. So anyway, thank you all for listening very attentively. Hare Krishna.